Hey, everybody, we have unlocked one of our old Patreon episodes on the wonderful Brad Bird movie Incredibles. You're about to listen to it, and as we prepare for Underworld, the series that won the bracket, you can listen to this and then next week Incredibles 2. But it's a good reminder that on our Patreon, patreon.com/Micah McCaw, link is going to be in the show notes. You can sign up, and when we get to 50 patrons, we're going to go through all the Pixar series we have not covered. Not just series, but even single movies. So we've been trying to do this for a couple of years. We have a wonderful fan base, wonderful patrons and stuff like that, but we're really trying to push to get to 50. So this is a reminder. This was one of our earliest Patreon episodes, so they're only going to get even better than this. But yeah, if you sign up, we can do Bug's Life, we can do Coco, we can do the Cars movies, which we haven't done. Those could technically be on the main feed, but yeah, there's just a bunch that we could do, and we really want to cover them. So help us get to 50. If you have friends, you can sign them up. If you have family, you can sign them up. If you are just obsessed with Pixar, you could make yourself, 14 or 15 different accounts. I don't actually suggest that. That would be a little wild, although it would count. So anyway, enjoy this episode, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks when we do Underworld.
Hello.
Hey patrons, what up? It's your favorite podcast, maybe. I hope.
If you're a Patreon subscriber for the podcast, I'm thinking it might be.
Yeah. And right now we are doing, this is MPU, the sequel. If you're new to this, on our main feed on the Macaw Podcast Universe, what we do is trilogies or more. But if you're joining in now, we're doing the movies that only have two movies total.
Yeah.
And so today we are jumping into The Incredibles. We're kind of kicking this whole thing off with all the Pixars that are just two movies, which is been interesting so far with Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. And this is no less interesting than that. Mm-hmm. So this comes off of the heels of, so Pixar's founded, they make Toy Story 1, huge hit. They make A Bug's Life, huge hit.
Oh, huge hit.
They make
Where's the sequel to that one? Am I right?
Yeah. Well, remember in Toy Story 2, there's the outtake, and the bugs say, like, we're in a sequel.
Finally in a, yeah.
But in Toy Story 2, they're like, it's like this studio.
They can't lose.
They cannot lose. And then all of a sudden, Monsters, Inc. And it's like, oh my gosh, they just keep pushing the boundaries. There's no way. Then in 2003, they go, Finding Nemo. So everyone's like, this studio is as good as it gets. And then in 2004, they release The Incredibles, to which everyone is like, yeah, they cannot be stopped. This studio is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Adults, kids, whoever, you can watch a Pixar movie.
Doesn't matter.
And it's going to be great. And then I think, Cars is the next movie. So that's when things change maybe a little bit. I mean, I think the first Cars is pretty good. Actually, I think they're all pretty good. They're just not Pixar caliber, Mm-hmm. Like they pass for good kids movies, but so
I didn't grow up liking Cars, so I didn't really care about it.
Yeah. Well, the thing about that series though is they make so much money on merchandising. It's insane. So like I think
it's smart. It was a smart next movie.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely fueled by, like, because 3 Cars movies, no one needs 3 Cars movies.
No.
One, I think, is interesting and good enough, but they kept making them. And I think it is definitely a corporate decision. Like, you know what? We do want to
We do want to make a little more than just like these artsy movies, and the merchandise is rolling.
And I'll say Cars makes for a good Cars Land. And I think I've already talked about it, but it is out of this world. Fantastic.
Right.
I can't wait to see what they do with Marvel stuff in California Adventure.
I know.
Because I remember when like the Bugs Life thing became a thing there, like that little area. They made it into the Bugs Life area, and I'm like, this is so cool. But then I heard they were doing Cars Land, and I think that was the summer I went. That was, I believe, the summer that we graduated high school. So we went there for a graduation trip. What's it called? Senior trip. Yeah. And you could it was boarded off still. But that summer I went to Disneyland twice.
Oh.
So by the time my family went again, Cars Land was open, and it was kind of like, yeah, we'll go because it's there. And then we get there, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's the movie. It was so good.
I know. I finally went there for the first time last year when we went to Disneyland. Or was it 2 years ago when we went with Hannah? I think it was 2 years ago. And I'd never been to that part of the park.
Amazing ride. So amazing. Worth doing the single rider line for
I hope that I hope that the Marvel one is like mind blowing.
I know. I remember we're taking a Disneyland tangent, people.
You're on Patreon. You want this.
Yeah. I remember too when they converted Tower of Terror to Guardians.
Oh.
I was pretty bummed. And Guardians is my favorite, as you patrons should know if you've listened to the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
And but I'm like love Twilight Zone. Like grew up Twilight Zone.
So cool, and it's like, how is it even going to be interesting? You're just going up and down. The other one worked so well.
Yeah, and for Tower of Terror, it was like their one haunted ride in California Adventure.
Yeah,
and the sets are just like chef's kiss beautiful on how they did everything, and I just wanted to like spend an entire day in the hotel.
Yeah,
and pretend that it was all real. And a fun story, the first time I went on that ride, I pretty much got to the like waiting to get on the ride, and I chickened out.
I was so scared to go on.
I was so scared, but then there was this kid who was like younger than me, and it was so sweet. He's like, "It's not that scary. It's really fun." And this kid like gave me the courage to do it.
Wow.
And I remember doing it, and it like I've never felt that sensation in your stomach.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most exhilarating sensations ever, and that's the closest I'll ever get to skydiving or bungee jumping or whatever. Anyway, so then so when Guardians happened, when we were there, the first time I went on it, it was like, okay, what are the sets going to be like? Is it going to be as cool as Tower of Terror? And then, of course, you're waiting in line, and it's all
the line went
Jeff
too
Goldblum.
Fast.
I know.
No, it's Benicio del Toro. It's the
Benicio
collector.
del Toro's, but it's got some Jeff Goldblum stuff there.
Yeah,
like he might even
like
talk a little bit.
Sanctum.
That's right. And it is just like, oh my gosh, they did it.
Yeah.
They freaking did it. And usually I remember with Tower of Terror, well, I mean, the line's always a long wait for that ride.
Yeah.
But Tower of Terror, like, it's funny comparing it to something like this, and it's like, man, it's more fun to wait in line for Guardians because I didn't think it would go too fast for me.
Yeah, and when Rocket pops up in the line and explains what to do.
We just look at each other and we're like, he's real.
Yeah.
That's really him.
That one was crazy, though, because I was like, the Tower of Terror, the actual ride experience, I really, really like. I almost like it. It's so fun, but I always get a little bit sick when I get out of Twilight Zone or now Guardians. And so the thing about it is it's like I just didn't know. I loved Twilight Zone, and I'm like, there's no way that they can top it, but it'll be fun, you know, because it's Guardians. And then it's like, it's so much better. It's crazy.
It's insane.
It's crazy how much better it is.
It's insane.
So,
and I will, to further it, and this ties back into Incredibles.
Yeah.
When the last time we were there, that's when California Screamin' became Incredicoaster, because it's Pixar Pier now. And I remember when we went on it, it was like, I mean, I genuinely don't know how they can change this one. So obviously they didn't really, they just added the characters kind of throughout. And it was like, again, I just like, seriously, Disney is the best. And I know that's not great because they're a monopoly, but it's like, they just really know what I want.
We can give the Imagineers cred.
Well, yeah, the Imagineers are just like, they truly get the best of the best, because even being on the Incredicoaster, and it's, the ride has not been changed, but the things that they added, it was I'm on it, and I'm like, my mind is being blown again.
Yeah, that was a very cool one. But
remember when Jack's like appearing and disappearing?
Yeah.
Or it looks like it, and then they have the
lasers,
laser eyes.
yeah.
And then at the end of the ride, there's that like a giant Jack in a room.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay,
Really
we can
cool.
talk about the movie now.
So let's talk. I just threw my phone, and it looks like there are no cracks. Let me check the back. No, we're good. Okay, so this is Brad Bird who directed this, and we're going to be talking about Brad Bird in another series that we're waiting to do. At some we got to build up to it, but he directed one of the Mission Impossible movies, and watching this movie, it makes so much sense why they hired him. It's insane that it's because you're like, oh, an animator doing an action movie, but then you watch this and it's so spy based and everything that it is just like, oh yeah,
it makes
he
sense.
was the guy to do this. So this is after. So he comes out with Iron Giant, then he comes out with this movie, and then his next movie is going to be Ratatouille. Okay. So that's kind of where he is in his career. We'll talk about the rest of it on our next Patreon episode. The movie's produced by John Walker, who did Iron Man, Tomorrowland, Iron Giant, Tomorrowland, Incredibles 2. It's written by Brad Bird, and the music, we've been talking about this guy a lot, Michael Giacchino, and this is his best score.
Yeah.
I love the score to this movie.
Yeah.
It's so good. He does the whole like muted trumpets, and it's jazzy, and it just feels like you're in like the 50s or 60s, and it's so good, and it's also kind of epic at the same time.
What are you looking at?
There's some people skating by, and then someone walked by as well. So now let's talk about the cinematographer. Actually, it's three cinematographers. So we have Andrew Jimenez, who is more of a visual effects guy, so he's done a bunch of visual effects for movies. Patrick Lynn, who did Toy Story 4 and Up. And then Janet LaCroix, Lucroy.
I have to look at it. I don't know.
But, it's not like the drink. It's not spelled like the drink or the place in France.
Can I see it?
Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
And
Lucroy.
This is her only credit on cinematography.
Okay.
It's produced by Walt Disney and Pixar, distributed by Buena Vista. Comes out November 5th, 2004. Kind of weird. I thought this was a summer movie, but I guess if you're hitting the Thanksgiving crowd, it's a family movie, so that's pretty smart.
Not all of them have come out this summer.
Yeah.
Coco came out in November.
Yeah, another good example of a family movie. But I think because the second movie came out in like July, so I was thinking that this was also because it's like action.
To think of it though, it is a family movie. Like it's about a family,
right?
I don't know if they put that much thought into it.
Oh yes, they did.
Okay,
they put more thought into it than that. Yeah. So then the movie cost $92 million to make, and this is hold on to that number because we're gonna talk about some people who did not think this movie was going to happen. Domestically, it makes $261.5 million, and then worldwide, it makes $631.5 million. I believe it also won Best Animated Feature.
It better.
So originally, Brad Bird was thinking about doing this movie in 2D cell animation.
Yeah.
And then Iron Giant bombs.
Yeah.
And does not do well. So he's kind of on the out.
Are you shocked? It's like finding out Tim Burton didn't direct Nightmare Before Christmas.
Wait, what?
Just because I think Iron Giant is just so beloved that I think most people don't know that it did not do well.
Oh, sure. Just like The Shining, maybe you might be like, oh yeah, that's just a movie that everybody, and it's like, no, people hated it when it came out. I see what you're saying. So he wanted to do 2D cell animation, but then after Iron Giant bombs, he gets in touch with John Lasseter, founder of Pixar, and he pitches it, and basically they're talking about it, and Lasseter's like, it should be full like 3D animation. Now, Brad Bird had never done 3D animation like this, so they're because a lot of the guys who go up in Pixar, and especially these first few movies, they are like Pixar people, like the founders and stuff, and so I think this is kind of odd that they would be like, you know what, you got it. And this whole time, and from what we have learned and know about Brad Bird, he's a very meticulous person. So it seems either they saw that and they were like, that's the energy we need, or maybe they were... It's kind of an interesting move to me, I think, for Pixar to make. And I did want to say, I think as artists, and I'm the people listening I think they're all artists too, at least to some degree. And this is a good show of like, he was a 2D animator, and now he's become one of the most iconic 3D directors of animation. Like, he has made some of the best 3D animated movies, Ratatouille and Incredibles. And so it just goes to show you that sometimes you have to pivot and you can still be true to your artistic intention.
Do you think that John Lasseter saw potential in Iron Giant?
I'm
and
sure
wasn't
he
really
did,
paying
yeah.
attention to like how it didn't do well?
Probably. And it sounds like they were friends. So, I mean, that's definitely a part of it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I guess I would encourage the audience and you and I that, like, maybe you're like, oh, this thing has to be like this. And then maybe another opportunity presents itself. You do that, and all of a sudden it's working. Mm-hmm. So, but you're going to love this, Jordan. During production, Hayao Miyazaki of Studio Ghibli visited Pixar, and he saw the story reels for the film, and Brad Bird asked if the reels made any sense, and he said, American nonsense, Miyazaki replied through an interpreter. I think it's very adventurous thing you are trying to do in an American film.
American nonsense? What does that mean?
What? Wait, let me read that again. When Brad Bird asked if the reels made any sense... Oh, I'm sorry. I read it wrong. Man, I really messed this up. So Brad Bird asked Hayao Miyazaki, is this just like American nonsense? Okay. And then he said, I think it's a very adventurous thing you are trying to do in an American film.
Okay.
So
cool.
He's basically saying you're doing something freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And then, so this is like the first time that they are making human 3D animated characters. So
that are not Andy and his mom.
Yeah, they are the main characters.
Yeah,
is what I mean. So basically, once again, as is with just about every Pixar movie up until, well, still even today, it's like they have to kind of break through new technology. So I mean, they have to start getting mannerisms down, and hair. I was reading was a pretty big problem.
Yeah, I bet.
And so
I would say Dash's hair, you can tell that they spent a lot of time on his hair.
Yeah, it's very wispy.
Yeah, and there were like it is obviously concept art wise, like it's pushed back because he runs fast.
Love that.
But I do like that, like the top of his head's like frizzy.
Yeah.
And I think Mr. Incredible's hair looked really good too.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
really good. And then Violet's hair, I'm like excited to watch the next movie because I bet her hair will look even better. I think it was a little too shiny.
Oh, okay.
In this movie, but it didn't look bad.
No.
Or by any means.
No.
The best hair is Jack Jack, though, I mean.
The little...
Yeah.
The little alfalfa spike.
Yeah.
When I was reading about the movie, though, there were a lot of these details that Brad Bird was like, no, Dash has to have, whipped back hair. This is an example. I don't know exactly that. And animators sitting there, and they're like, we can't do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're going to have to figure out something else. And Brad Bird's basically like, no. I'm not going to have to figure out something else. We're going to have to figure out how to make
He's
it
like,
work.
I wanted this to be 2D, if everyone can remember. So I made a compromise. Everyone else has to also.
And it came up time and time again because there's like insane action sequences in this movie.
Yeah.
And there's all these camera movements that are fairly complex. And so Brad Bird is bringing a lot to this. I think... I think he does get the credit he deserves. But it is like... I think Pixar is not the company it is today without Brad Bird making Incredibles.
Yeah, and I don't envy the people who had to work on this movie.
Oh my
because
gosh.
He sounds like someone
18-hour days, I bet.
and he sounds like someone who was a proponent of that, and that's not good.
Yeah.
But at the same, like, there's like it's a double-edged sword. It's like, I think, kind of black and white. You should not exploit someone's working for like 18 hours a day. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
But then it is like, but look at the result. I think like people like him would say that.
Yeah.
Like, look at what we were able to achieve, though. It's like, work hard now, rest later.
Well,
and it's like, that's just not morally okay or ethical, but yeah.
And that's an interesting conversation because I'm sure that a lot of animators are just fine doing that. like they're stressed, they hate it when they're doing it, but they're like, I'm so glad I did it. But there is that weird thing we've talked about it a couple times before, where some directors are like so meticulous.
Yeah, isn't Miyazaki like that?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I wanted to say him too, that he's, I mean, he can be like very intense, I guess.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like he's intense in a way that's like yelling at people, but being more like your grandpa who's like, well, I'm disappointed and I don't want to see that ever again. That's ugly.
Yeah, I do think
And
I
you're
get
like,
that impression too.
Oh, I'm destroyed now. And it's like, what, you want to take a break? You've only worked 16 hours today.
And like, I think too, people who get to work for Studio Ghibli, like, well, I know he's retired now, but it, you know, at the time he was working, I'm sure that people who got hired, you know, that's like the Disney of anime. And
yeah.
people who accept those jobs know what they're getting into. Still doesn't necessarily make all these like kind of bad working conditions okay.
Right.
But I think people go into it like, I am willing to do these things countless numbers of times until I get it right, because that's how much I believe in it. And I think that's what people like Miyazaki want out of a hard worker, which is very admirable.
Yeah.
But then it's like, HR wise, not great.
Well, and there is something to be said for like, you know, if you're coaching the 49ers or something, are you going to be like, nah, that play sucked, but you know what, it's fine? Or are you going to like hammer your team and make them run laps and like all that stuff so you can win? I think it's kind of that mentality, but in the arts. It's like the person could have been a coach. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I had forgotten that I made this note. This is a quote from Brad Bird, and it actually speaks to what we were just talking about. So he said, The Incredibles was everything that computer-generated animation had trouble doing. It had human characters, it had hair, it had water, it had fire, it had a massive number of sets. The creative heads were excited about the idea of the film, but once I showed story reels of exactly what I wanted, the technical teams turned white. They took one look and thought, this will take 10 years and cost $500 million. How are we possibly going to do this? So I said, give us the black sheep. I want artists who are frustrated. I want the ones who have another way of doing things that nobody's listening to. Give us all the guys who are probably headed out the door.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah. A lot of them were malcontents because... Malcontents? I don't know. Because they saw different ways of doing things, but there was little opportunity to try them since the established way was working very, very well. We gave the black sheep a chance to prove their theories, and we changed the way a number of things are done here, for less money per minute than was spent on the previous film, Finding Nemo. We did a movie that had 3 times the number of sets and had everything that was hard to do. All this because the heads of Pixar gave us leave to try crazy ideas.
I was going to say that gave me goosebumps.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. So I got just a couple more. This is cool. This is for probably specifically Sean Muir on this one. The score of the movie was recorded on analog tape so that it would have the old sound quality.
Holy crap, man. That's cool.
Pretty cool. And then, so a year later, the Fantastic Four movie was going to come out with Jessica Alba and Chris Evans. And they had to make a bunch of changes to their script because it had a lot of similarities to this movie.
No way,
so they
really?
Sat down, watched the movie, and they're like, oh no.
What is that movie about? I don't remember.
It's been a long time.
I know it's like an origin story.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, the joke is that The Incredibles is the good Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah.
It is quite a bit different. The dynamics are different, but the whole thing about Fantastic Four is that it's about a family.
Yeah.
And this movie nails that, and none of the other movies have gotten even close to that.
Of Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Best Animated. Yeah. And it was nominated for Best Sound and Best Screenplay. And Sound Mixing. Oh, no, it won Best Animated and Best Sound Editing, and then it was nominated for Screenplay and Best Sound Mixing.
Cool. It should have been nominated for Screenplay.
Yeah. Oh, the screenplay's fantastic. So that is what I have.
Okay.
Now you can take over.
So Mr. Incredible is played by Craig T. Nelson, who is the coach himself from the show Coach.
Okay. Yeah.
He's also in Poltergeist, The Family Stones. I guess he's in Young Sheldon. Looks like he plays a coach.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wait. No, different coach from Coach. He's He's also in Book Club, Gold, Get Hard, Parenthood.
He was in Book Club?
What did I say? What's Book Club?
Isn't that the... Oh, I'm thinking of Book Smart.
Micah, this is Book Club.
Ah, yes. I was thinking
a movie for your grandma.
I was thinking of the Olivia Wilde directed Booksmart that came out last year.
Oh, no. And then Samuel Jackson's in it, which we have covered to death probably 3 times because I can't remember. Holly Hunter, we've not covered her, right?
I don't believe we have.
She is a true...
Is she in any of the Toy Story movies?
She Jessie? No, that's Joan Cusack.
Yeah,
who I thought
we're
was
good.
Holly
We're
Hunter. She is a true American treasure.
Oh,
She's
we love
in
Holly
Succession.
Hunter.
Hello, Succession.
Yes.
She's also in Big Sick, 13.
Oh yeah, she's incredible.
Here and Now,
Sick.
Song to Song. Just so much stuff. Batman v Superman, I guess.
Oh yes, she gets you are not going to believe this. Lex Luthor gives her a jar of pee in a courtroom.
I've heard about that.
Before she gets blown up. So yeah, that's...
Can't wait to go over those.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like, I think we're getting...
You gotta cover the DC because we did Marvel.
Well, I had originally not wanted to... Well, I wanted to cover DC from the get-go, and then I was like, oh my gosh, it's gotten so convoluted. I just don't even care anymore. But it's too interesting what that franchise has done and become, and how they're like...
we should wait until Suicide Squad 2 comes out.
Maybe lead up to Suicide Squad 2.
Sure.
Okay, that's what we're going to do, folks. Lead up to Suicide Squad 2. We're going to cover the DC universe.
Yeah, we'll go over the whole James Gunn debacle when we cover that. And then Jason Lee, who plays Syndrome. Whoops.
Oh, yeah. It's Earl.
He has 2 of Jennifer Jason Leigh's names. Jason Lee. He's in Almost Famous, Chasing Amy, Vanilla Sky. He's in My Name is Earl. He is Earl.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
And Alvin and the Chipmunks.
I've seen a few episodes of that show a long time ago. I feel like that show kind of ruled.
I've never
pretty
seen it.
Good.
Isn't it just about a dude who just needs to grow up?
Well, it's like he's doing... I think he was an alcoholic, and
okay.
And he's making amends with everyone he's messed up. So like every episode would be like, oh my gosh, I toilet papered this guy's house when I was drunk. So he'd go to the house and then he'd have to like do yard work for the guy or something like that. And it was the same people who made Raising Hope, which was a pretty great show.
That was.
What?
I really got bored with that show.
Yeah, but I think that's
I got
fair.
bored with it because I think I figured out the formula.
Yeah, have you said this on mic?
The
whole
formula thing? Okay, well, so a lot of, I would say, modern day sitcoms, and that, I guess I'll use How I Met Your Mother as an example because that's when I discovered it. But I was watching How I Met Your Mother. I think it was a summer when they were basically whatever channel was showing the whole show. So Veronica and I would just stay up to all hours of the night watching How I Met Your Mother. Maybe it was on Netflix.
It was on Netflix for a while.
But I think it was like we started watching it on TV and then whatever. So I got really into How I Met Your Mother for a summer. And
same summer for me.
Yeah. Got to a point, there's 9 seasons, got like pretty far into it. And I got to a point where I'm like, I started noticing that. So the show, it's a comedy, it's a sitcom, but it's also, there's drama. Who's the mom, Yeah. So as serious, so there'd be the serious through line and then the funny through line. And the serious through line, there would always be one episode that's really, really a big thing happens. Next episode, they do not address that thing that happens. Episode after the funny one, they address the dramatic thing. And it was just this cycle where they just did this every time. And it was, I think once I figured it out, I just had to stop watching it because it just got boring to me.
Yeah.
And also I found out they were making like another season. Yeah. And it was like, oh, this has already gone on for way too long. I'm out.
Do you remember they were working on a spinoff that was How I Met Your Father? And I think it went to pilot and then it did not air.
Who was in it?
I'll look it up while you...
Oh, okay.
I don't remember who it was.
But I think that Raising Hope, I'm not going to say that they had the same exact formula, but they definitely had something that I was watching it and I was just like, ugh. Boring. I just like everything is the same. I also don't watch modern day sitcoms too often because every sitcom has to cover things that other sitcoms have covered. Mm-hmm. Just like hard family issues. and it's just boring to me.
Oh man, we may have missed out on How I Met Your Dad is what it was called, because it had one of the 4 leads was Greta Gerwig.
I don't care.
That's great though.
I'm glad that she wasn't
well,
a part
actually,
of that.
yeah, maybe she wouldn't have made those great movies. And then it's a bunch of kind of like insert good-looking guy,
Yeah.
you know, people. And then yeah, I don't really know who these people. Meg Ryan was the narrator.
She dodged a bullet, and I'm talking about Greta.
Drew Tarver was in it.
Really?
Yeah. That is so funny. Anyway, How I Met Your Dad, yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of let me throw some beef at How I Met Your Dad. It needs to be How I Met Your Father. That's probably why it failed, because How I Met Your Dad implies that the previous show is called How I Met Your Mom.
Yeah.
So that's messed up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Okay, next is Spencer Fox, who plays Dash, kid actor.
Yeah.
He voices in Kim Possible. He's Jim and Tim Possible. He's also in Air Buddies.
Wow.
Good for him. He is 1 year older than us.
Are you going to hit Edna Mode?
Get it. Hold on. I'm trying to find the other. Who's Violet?
I mean, you've covered a lot of people.
Wallace Shawn's in this movie.
Yes.
He plays the boss. He's from Princess Bride. But I really want to know who plays Violet. Sarah Vowell, who is also in The Incredibles 2.
Okay.
Wow. She is like as old as my mom.
Really?
Yeah. Okay.
When your mom is 28, as far as
Yep.
I'm concerned.
And then Edna Mode is played by Brad Bird.
Yeah. Very good voice performance.
Yes.
You know, if you listen to our Shrek series, you know that Jordan and I are big fans of like a vocal artist.
Yeah.
And when someone does,
Wait, we did cover
yeah,
that?
because you talked about Walter something who was Rumpelstiltskin, and he is like a voice actor. He is not.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah.
and we went off about how like it is cool that celebrities voice stuff, but sometimes it's like, no, I don't want to see Trolls World Tour where there's no
Yeah.
like actual voice actors. It's just like Justin Timberlake being Justin
They do that
Timberlake.
because it gets it
Yeah.
sells tickets. What was I gonna say?
Well, the funny thing is that I never realized, because I think I was too young, but they've talked about this on Blank Check, that was never the case until Aladdin. And then,
really? Oh wait, the new Aladdin?
No,
Okay.
the old Aladdin, because Robin Williams did
Williams.
such an insane performance, which
yeah,
actually,
but that's Robin Williams.
I would say that is a vocal performance.
Totally.
Like, that is not just an actor showing up being I mean, he is being Robin Williams, but that's the point. And then from then on out, it's like you get like actors to be in, and then they're like part of the draw. But that, if you watch any of those old like Disney cartoons and stuff, I don't know who these people are.
No.
Except if I know them from other voiceover stuff.
If anything, getting celebrities now or just in recent culture makes it so annoying to watch movies sometimes. Because
Yeah.
I'm most of the
You're
movie,
sitting there with a headache.
especially when you're in theaters.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, it drives me nuts. And it's without fail, I'll lean to Micah and say, "Do you know who that is?"
Yeah. And usually if I know the person, it's like I will sit there and I'll just be like, it's Jay Baruchel or something.
Yeah.
And I'll just sit there and just wait for you, and then I'll be like, Jay Baruchel, just so that the conversation is over and I can keep watching the movie.
And I can't get past it.
I'm with you, though.
It impedes the viewing experience.
I feel like every time we watch a dubbed anime, it's always like, who is this? Who is this? And especially those Miyazakis, they recorded a lot of those in like the late 80s and 90s, early 2000s. So the voices are like so close, but I can't figure it out.
The last anime movie I saw in theaters, I think it was Weathering with You, and the main guy, it was dubbed, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I think that's Tom Holland. Like, it has to be Tom Holland. And like the movie was beautiful. I highly recommend it. But there was underlying me enjoying that movie, just going back and forth of, no, I don't think that is him. And then it's like, no, it's definitely him. I can't wait for this movie to end so I can look it up. And then it wasn't him.
And then
so all that for
sometimes
nothing.
You like get through a scene and then you're like, I just want that character. You're not even paying attention. You're just like, when is the main character going to be back in? I don't care about the second person.
I know.
Because I want to know if that's Tom Holland.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Incredibles.
Okay.
So the movie starts with a great, amazing intro.
One of the best expositions
ever.
of a movie ever.
It's so good.
Yeah.
All of the world building in this movie. Let's talk about the world building first.
Yeah.
And kind of jump around the plot, because I'm sure our audience is familiar with the plot of this movie. But so they do like he's being interviewed, Mr. Incredible, and they're interviewing all of the superheroes and like
And
black and white
grainy.
footage,
It's the box.
which is impressive
frame.
in itself. I don't know how they animate that stuff.
I don't know. And then you notice that when he would move too close to the camera, it would go out of focus.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, it did, Micah.
Well, and they also had the way they did which makes sense why they got nominated for the sound stuff is
Oh, the crackling.
yeah, like the crackling, and then it was peaking at
Yes.
certain frequencies that like when they were talking too loud, but in a very intentional. It wasn't like, oh, my speakers are going out.
Yeah.
And so they do all of that, and they kind of set the scene for like everybody loves superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
Now
They're common.
They're common. Now, to keep talking about the world building, later on in the movie, the superheroes are going to get sued. And I think this is such a stroke of genius. And it's funny because when I saw Captain America Civil War, it was like, oh, you're like 10 years too late on this idea. Because it's like, the government's like, superheroes are out of control.
This is the movie you show your kids before like when they're too young to watch Watchmen.
Yes.
It really
yes.
is.
Do you have more on that like connection?
Well, and I haven't watched or read Watchmen in like years now, and I would not call myself an expert. But Watchmen basically when Watchmen is taking place in the story, superheroes aren't really a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's obviously there are like, what am I trying to say? Like, especially the Patrick Wilson character, like he does not do his thing anymore.
Yeah.
Like most people. And it's a lot of flashbacks to superheroes being super common. The Minutemen.
Yeah.
And what was the whole Ozymandias, his point, his whole like thesis was he wanted to unleash this monster from another dimension. Well, I know this isn't
To
the
unite
movie.
the world.
To unite the world.
The world. Yeah.
Yeah,
not
and
the worlds.
basically, I think because superheroes were kind of like not in vogue anymore, like not really part of anything, he was going to be the one that saved everyone. He was like the syndrome of the movie.
Yeah. Well, and I think like with Watchmen and this movie, what's really cool is they're a commentary about superheroes. They're also a commentary on family. Incredibles, but
It's a commentary on American families.
yes. But like with Watchmen, it's like you have this, 50 years of comic books, and then Alan Moore comes along and writes something that like imbues all of the nostalgia about it, but asks like really serious questions and has a comment on it, like says something about it. Whereas, not to like dunk on Deadpool too much, but there is an element of like, look, there's a lot of superheroes. Let's just make fun of it for a while, which is not a bad thing to do, but it's not like,
Well, he has
it
a
doesn't
more-
really stick with me.
He
You know
has
what I mean?
Deadpool's more of a nihilistic character where
Yeah.
nothing matters. When like Watchmen is not, I wouldn't say it has a nihilist point of view.
No.
And I remember being someone who, like, as Marvel movies were coming out, mostly unimpressed by most of them. Obviously, as you guys know, my opinion has changed on a lot of that.
Yeah.
But, like, did not grow up reading comic books or anything, really just tired of superheroes. When I finally got my hands on Watchmen, this is in college, like, way, way late. It was like, this is what I've been looking for. And if comics had to be around for this long in order for me to read this one,
Yeah.
worth it.
Well, and it's, again, speaking to all of that with Incredibles, I think that it was wild watching this movie because it feels like it is commentating on the past 15 years of superhero movies.
Yeah.
But at this time, when this comes out, we've had, Blade, which is like an adult audience. We've had X-Men, which has done really well. And then we've had Spider-Man, of the like new comic book superheroes that they are in the current age. And it's kind of like, how did Brad Bird have the wherewithal to like say this much about superheroes in a way he's not like it's not like Todd Phillips where he's like, let's make an actually good movie with the Joker. Brad Bird, you can tell he reads comics. You can tell he loves them. He's not trying to be a jerk about it.
Yeah.
But it's just really wild watching this now, because it could come out today and you'd be like, wow, they just summed up all of the things. So
the movie becomes more topical as years go on.
So there's some great action sequences as we're seeing Mr. Incredible do his thing. You know, there's gunmen flying through the city, driving through, and he's changing. Kind of has like a Batman-ish car.
Yeah.
And it's all very it's like things we've seen before, but the angle is so fresh.
Yeah.
It's such a fresh angle, and the family angle of it is just fantastic.
Yeah. It's a good. So the interview is a really interesting sequence, and then you have some newspaper article sequence, and then you have the sequence of him, like you said, fighting crime.
Yeah.
And
saving the cat.
So adding some this is what a superhero would be doing, kind of practical side to it, and then Elastigirl. I like how that whole sequence ends with them getting married.
Yes.
So good. I love that. Plus their little witty banter, little flirting up on the roof.
And it does have an element he's kind of stating the theme of the movie where she's saying you're going to have to, we knew when we got married that you were going to have to step up as they're about to get married. And then he says, I do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We also have Bon Voyage, which is a great villain name.
Oh, I love it.
And he, we should talk about Syndrome, because Syndrome shows up.
He's Buddy.
He's
at
Buddy.
This point.
He's Incrediboy.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm going to be the sidekick. And Mr. Incredible's like, I fly solo. No way. And then Buddy interprets that as, which I think he's kind of right in his interpretation, but he's also a kid, you know? But he interprets it as, I'm not super, so you are not, you're biased against me. But I made these rocket boots and all this stuff. He almost gets everybody killed.
Almost gets himself killed.
And Mr. Incredible is able to save him, and then they get married. But let's talk about that theme in the movie.
Yeah, so the movie is we keep throwing the word commentary around.
It's The Incredibles.
But this part of the movie, so flash forward to him working in a cubicle. And also you see that superheroes are sued. Now you can't be a superhero. You have to blend in with society. Which
is so funny when the interview is going and the guy's like, Mr. Wallace did not want to be saved. He did not ask to be saved.
Yeah, really, really good. Oh yeah, that part was so funny. But yeah, so it is a commentary on an American family, and that it's just so brilliant in terms of the artwork and the concept art that the sets make it look like the 50s and 60s. Yes. When American values in life might be at their looking back in history a peak of American family
in a nostalgia goggles white America way.
Yes, totally. So it's even down to the subtle things of the artwork is just perfect. But then you also see the corporate side of it in terms of its job, where he works in a cubicle. Everyone's pretty much nameless. It doesn't really, your identity doesn't matter, which clearly means a lot to Mr. Incredible. I remember seeing it as a kid, that scene where hard cut to him in the cubicle talking to the old lady. I thought it was so funny.
Oh yeah. But by the way, it is the way they color it and they make that cubicle, it is awful to look at.
Yeah.
In a very intentional way.
It's very overexposed and gray.
Yeah.
Because fluorescent lights and stuff. But you see really quickly, obviously he looks miserable. He hates it. He has let himself go throughout the years. And then also you see that he works at an insurance company that, is supposed to help people. But clearly because of his boss is like, we need to figure out how to not help people so that we can make money.
Which is against his very nature.
So you see, there's just such great writing. It's the character that he has continued to be, even at this point where he helps this woman.
Yeah.
Still. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when he goes home, it shows, like we said, an American family, a very chaotic one. I know I'm skipping over like Dash being the Princess Lost and stuff, but they do kind of cover those tropes too. With Dash, the son, being in trouble for being a stinker. Yeah. He's like being a Bart.
And it is cool that the people's and And I know Brad Bird has talked about how it was very intentional, where it's like the dad is like the strong guy, the mom has to do all of these things, she's stretched thin, literally.
Yeah.
And then Violet is like shy, and like a lot of teens that feel that way. And then Dash is like crazy and wanting to do stuff. So very cool.
Yeah, just so brilliant. So brilliant.
One thing we have to mention, though, Wallace Shawn is the insurance guy. He's very small. He has a huge jaw, and the character design is incredible. He is so cool looking.
Yeah.
And his voice matched with that, you're just like, oh, this guy sucks so bad.
Yeah, they really nailed him.
Yeah. But go ahead.
Oh, it's okay.
No.
Oh,
I will not go.
We're introduced to Dash. Like I said, he is in trouble, and that whole sequence they do a really good job of, once you are introduced to a character, you are introduced to what their power is through a practical application.
Absolutely.
So you see Dash, the driving a teacher, insane with his power, and then you see Violet, like you just said, like she likes this boy, but she wants to be, she's a preteen.
Yeah.
So it's like she wants to, like, oh, don't look at me. She goes invisible. Perfect.
Yeah.
And then, so then when we go home and the family's eating around the table, you see Mr. Incredible is not, he is like broken down. Society has broken him down, because now all he is expected to do is work hard for his family. Not that anything, like the Mrs. Incredible, or Elastigirl, sorry, she, obviously argues that you are doing a selfless thing for this family. You were working hard for this family, and we really respect that and love you for it. And he is so broken down that he doesn't even hear that stuff anymore. It doesn't even matter to him anymore.
Yeah.
To the point where he's not even really paying attention to his children.
Right.
And the only time he really does pay attention to his children is when he finds out that his son did something with his powers.
Right.
Which is wrong, but he can't help but be excited about it.
Right, and one of the beautiful things about this movie that, because I always think, even though I don't have an intention of doing this at the moment, but it's like if I wrote a script or had to make a movie or something, it's like, how do you make, they're at the table talking. How do you make the scene more interesting than them just talking? So the whole time he's cutting a steak, and then he breaks the steak. The plate.
Yeah.
In doing that, you learn more about Mr. Incredible, and there's all this... in a lot of ways, it's kind of how a lot of comedies function, where there's always more going on than just the simplicity of the conversation. It's not like two people are sitting in a coffee shop talking.
Yeah.
It's like, while they're doing that, the waitress keeps coming back, and she's asking all of these questions, and that makes it funny. That could be in a comedy. And
I remember
this movie does that. Like, in every scene, there's always all this extra business.
Yeah,
and that's so smart.
We're thrust into the middle of this family's life, and this reminds me of listening to the Q&A podcast with
Jeff Goldsmith.
With Camille.
Yeah.
Kumail, sorry.
Camille.
Kumail Nanjiani about The Big Sick. And he was talking about working with Judd Apatow. And this is when Jordan turned around on Judd Apatow.
Yes.
In the interview.
Jordan is obsessed with Judd Apatow.
But
Judd
she
doesn't
Apatow.
really watch his movies. She just likes when he's producing something.
I do. He says, so Judd Apatow produced the movie, and he talks about basically how, what does it mean when Judd Apatow produces a movie?
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things I think that Kumail said that he learned the most, which is a very simple thing that I think a lot of writers do not think about, is that when you are writing a scene, start the scene in the middle of the scene, not at the beginning of the scene.
Yeah.
So if people are having a conversation, start in the middle of the conversation, because it is so much more interesting.
Absolutely.
Than just the very beginning of everything. Because as a viewer, you're thrust into the middle of this thing. You have to figure out what's going on. And because the writing will be good, it should be good, because of social cues, what they're talking about, and body language, you will learn what they're talking about. And I think he even argues it's not even really what they're talking about that you need to be paying attention to. So in this scene in The Incredibles, it's not that Elastigirl's talking about Dash getting in trouble. That's not what it's about. It's not about punishing their son for doing something bad in school. It is to show you how little Mr. Incredible pays attention anymore. Mm-hmm. And it also shows how he misses being a super so much that he can't help but be proud of his son for being a super.
Yeah. And there's just all this great business. And then later, I think we could probably skip to when Frozone, Samuel L. Jackson, and Mr. Incredible do their bowling night. And there's this sequence. So he has not been a superhero for a long time, but him and Frozone, they sneak out and they go, quote, bowling, because they're in the superhero relocation program. They can't help anybody. But when they do, they just sit in a car, swap stories, and then they are on a police scanner. Great example of what you just said, too, is that scene starts, and he's like, so I'm talking to the guy, and he starts monologuing. Can you believe it? The guy starts monologuing.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there all tied up, and which was a hilarious like comment on monologuing villains.
Yeah.
Which actually The Last Action Hero has my favorite joke about that, because he's the, I don't know if who has seen The Last Action Hero is listening. A great movie that is completely misunderstood. But Arnold Schwarzenegger and the kid are tied up. Or maybe it's just Arnold Schwarzenegger and the cartoon cat that's in the movie, which is funny. And the guy is monologuing for a while. And then the kid comes in, and I think he like knocks him out or hits him or something like that, holds to a gun, and he goes, "You villains are so stupid. You always monologue. You can't monologue. That's when we get you."
Yeah.
It's so great.
That's funny.
But so they hear that there's a fire, and so they go to help at this fire and get these people out of the fire. I cannot believe that they animated this 15 years ago.
I know.
I think it's insane. The light exposure on their skin and stuff totally makes sense. The flames are kind of nuts.
Yeah.
And everything is kind of blowing up and stuff. I just cannot believe that was animated back then.
Mm-hmm. I have nothing to add. I mean, it is truly, it's mind-boggling.
It's insane.
And now it's one of those things where, like, I think I've talked about this before. I think we might have talked about it like in Finding Dory, but it's just like things are advancing at such a rate in animation that I really don't know what they could do next.
Yeah.
Because everything looks amazing now.
Right. I know it is weird though, because we had that same mentality when we saw, we were kids, but like seeing Incredibles, it's just like, oh, this is what movies look like. Then you see Incredibles 2, and then we see this movie, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess none of the characters have like pores on their skin or like stubble, or that's kind of weird.
Yeah,
but we're treated too nicely with animation. It just keeps growing and growing.
Thank you, animators.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Brad Bird. I'm so happy you signed up to be a patron. I would love to have you on.
Get Tom to sign up.
When we do Mission Impossible, please come on. And hopefully COVID will be over and we can hang out. But so then Mr. Incredible comes home, and Elastigirl's like, hey, she kind of figures out what he's doing.
Yeah.
And they have this argument, and he says this key line where he says, she's like, you're gonna miss Dash's graduation, and he goes, it's third to fourth grade, it's not that big of a deal. And he says they keep on finding new ways to celebrate mediocrity.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this theme.
Yeah.
Because it comes up a lot in the movie, and we have Syndrome, who wants to make everyone super so that nobody is super.
And you notice too, when we're introduced to Dash's character, and when they finally leave the principal's office, and he's like begging his mom to do sports, and they won't let him because he would obviously win everything. And she makes some comment about like everyone's special or everyone's super, and he's like, that's just another way of saying no one is.
Yes.
And when Syndrome says it later on, it is like, wow, what a wonderful thesis.
Yeah, so what would you say is like the message then in regards to that? Because at the end of the movie, they are incredible. So is the message like the world celebrates mediocrity, but you can be incredible, and you should embrace being incredible?
Yeah, I have to like chew on that one, because what's interesting about it is he says it pretty early on in the movie, so that's before his character has changed.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what he would think, like, post everything that happened. I feel like in a lot of ways he'd probably still agree with what he said, because I also agree with what he said. Then
the other thing about it though is before they do that last fight, he says to the kids, I've been a terrible dad to you. Mm-hmm. And so I think along with what I just said, he is also realizing like, you can be incredible in things that are seemingly mundane because he has been a bad father. And I'm sure now he wants to be an incredible father.
Yeah.
Just as he is an incredible superhero.
Yeah, but I think his big thing, his big change is like accepting, like not, because like you said, his character's kind of created to be the dad that is strong, like the typical American ideal of a father. And by the end of the movie, at that point in the movie that you're talking about, they're like, you don't have to be though, because you have us.
Yeah.
And that's when they all fight together.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that exactly addresses the other comment he made, but
there's a lot in there.
It's just like you don't have to, and it kind of, I don't know, it's like you don't have to be incredible alone.
Yeah.
You can like you can be incredible with your family, your friend. Like you don't have to just like always be the number one person that you carry the world on your shoulders. Mm-hmm. But I have to chew on the other thing.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think the things I said I agree with. Yeah. I don't need to reiterate them, do I?
No.
Do you want me to?
No.
Be honest.
No.
So he gets a secret message, and he basically Syndrome, he doesn't know this yet, gets him on an island to fight this technological
robot.
That's the word I was looking for.
A robot that's AI that has learned that learns off of your skills so that it can beat you.
Yeah. And great action sequences here. Mm-hmm. And his whole outlook on life, it's because this movie is also kind of about a midlife crisis. Mm-hmm. Well, it's definitely not kind of.
Yeah.
That's a huge theme of it. And so at this point, it's like renewed. We see this amazing montage where he's being a better dad, and he's, him and his wife have like a spark in their marriage that doesn't seem like it was there for many years.
Yeah.
And all is going well. And then, of course, when he's on the island, he gets captured, and things go south, and Syndrome tries to kill him. Mm-hmm. And during this, he does uncover this larger plot, which is that Syndrome wants to make everybody super so that nobody's super, but first he wants to take all the credit, and he wants to unleash this beast.
And he's killing all the superheroes.
Yes, and he's used that sequence. They don't ever address it, which I love. They just show us Mr. Incredible logs into the computer after he finds the password. Mm. And when he's looking at it, it shows version 1 of the robot, and then it shows all these superheroes, and they keep getting terminated, and then it'll say robot terminated, and then it'll say version 2, and then more superheroes. So he keeps making more and more, killing off superheroes, and then he's found the one that he thought killed Mr. Incredible. And so he's going to send it to the city and do his thing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there's all the fun stuff with Edna Mode. There's an amazing shot where when she is showing Mrs. Incredible all of the suits, it's like a one shot with the camera.
Oh yeah, it's so amazing.
It's like panning with them as they look at it and then coming back like it's on a dolly.
Yeah.
And it's, again, for 2004 animation, I'm like, I don't get this.
Still don't envy the animators.
No. So there's all of that great business, and then finally Mrs. Incredible's like, I gotta go save my husband. There's a beacon, all the minutia of the details that we don't need to talk about. And they head out. Jack's gonna be babysat, and Dash and Violet are on the plane with Mrs. Incredible. Mm-hmm. And when they're headed out, the plane gets attacked. And I love in this sequence how she keeps saying, Violet, you have to make a force field to block this. And she is unsuccessful in doing it.
The tension is so insane in that scene.
And this scene and then the rest of Mrs. Incredible sneaking around the island is just this is some of the best action and some of the best spy stuff we've seen.
Yeah.
It is up there with everything else. It's got that Bond vibe that's amazing. And it makes so much sense that he directed Mission Impossible 4. Yeah. Because it's he gets
Is that the Burj Khalifa one?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. He gets how to, have consequences in your action and how to grow things and change things and keep your story going while there's action, but also just beautiful shots. Mm-hmm. You're never confused about the action. Mm-hmm. You know where everything is geographically.
Absolutely.
there's that great sequence with Dash just running all over the place. Do you want to talk about that?
But yeah, I mean, he's running away from henchmen, and then that's when he learns he can run on water, and that what his realization and his reaction is to laugh. It is like I got chills and I'm laughing at the same time. That whole sequence, like you said, is incredible. A lot of it because like you're never confused about what's going on, and what's brilliant about it is, like I just said. Oh yeah, sorry, I said this while we were watching the movie.
Yeah.
But what's a really fun thing in this movie is, it's established that there are these supers who have been supers for a long time. So like Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, they know their potential in terms of powers. Dash and Violet do not, because they've not been allowed to use them. Yeah. And what's so brilliant about that is because they're here, like snuck onto this mission, we're watching them discover what their potential is. And that is like so cool. And I love that there's not too much attention paid to it.
Yeah.
And it is just like, he needs to run on water now. He did it. He learned.
Yeah.
She needs to make a stronger force field. She does it. She learned.
It's a lot of showing, not telling.
Absolutely.
I mean, most of this movie is that. It's a movie you could watch on mute and you'd get it.
Yeah.
But all that, they rescue Mr. Incredible. They head back to the city. They have to stop am I missing things you want to hit on?
I don't know.
Your eyes gave me you're missing something. But all this great stuff. They make it back to the city. They have to stop Syndrome. One of the things I really love is the sequence, because a lot of times in superhero movies that last sequence is really, really long, and it's like when they, in a different movie when he shoots that claw into the robot. Someone would have like come out of the robot, or the robot would have got back up.
Yeah, we'd still have another 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I was going to say that this is along with like good storytelling. So throughout the movie, Mr. Incredible is in contact with this Mirage woman.
Yes.
And she becomes like the Deus Ex Machina character. And it works because we don't really know who she, I mean, she's very side character, but you see, when Mr. Incredible threatens to kill her in front of Syndrome, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He wants him to do it.
Yeah.
And so she now has motivation to like go against Syndrome.
And when he fires the missiles at the kids,
that also,
in the plane, she's like, "You what?"
Yeah. So when she eventually helps the family a couple times, it's like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I'm not like, rolling my eyes or anything.
Yeah. And at the end, great action again. We're seeing their powers in fun ways. And
great to see Frozone. Love seeing him do his powers.
And it's all there. Let me check my notes. Then I think what we have to talk about is that there is the Jack of it all. Oh,
I was going to mention before we get there. Yes. So the movie ends. Families learned a lot about themselves now. It does. What is the guy who's like the shield guy? What is he talking about in the car? He doesn't mention...
he's talking about the superhero relocating, and he's like we can't keep doing this.
No, not the beginning of the movie, at the end of the movie, when they're in the car. He's like excited. He's like...
Oh, he was... I think he's like, we're going to get this figured out so that this can keep happening.
Okay, that's what I thought. So, cool change there. And then we see Dash doing a sport.
Yes.
Doing track. And that was like, so funny. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah.
It's one of the best, like the funniest parts in the movie, of the family telling him like, no, you're going too fast. Oh, now you're going too slow. Second place.
Yeah. And the guy's
like
looking at him like, what the heck?
Oh gosh, it's so funny. And then we see Violet get confidence.
Yes.
And then we can go Jack.
Okay. And we are running out of time, so we got to blow through this part. But Jack attacks Syndrome, because Syndrome attempts to steal him, and he's going to make him like super, and it'll be his child. And when he flies up, Jack has no powers, and then he turns into a flame, turns into like iron, turns into this demon thing.
So funny.
And it is still such an effective, hilarious gag.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I love that they say that Jack has no powers, but he actually has them all.
Yeah, he's got like 27 powers.
Yeah.
And then there's the great Jack attack short. That shows from the babysitter's perspective what happens leading up to Syndrome picking him
And
up.
maybe Mozart awakened his powers within.
Yeah, because as soon as she plays Mozart, he starts having
Well,
powers.
what's funny is she was saying when she was on the phone, she was like, "I'm gonna play some Mozart for him when he's asleep because Mozart makes you smarter." And so when she plays
makes
it,
baby
it's like,
smarter, and then immediately,
I guess it's true in some ways.
and that's great. The movie's fantastic. Love, love, love it. One of Pixar's best.
Yeah.
And next month we will be doing Incredibles 2. Not The Incredibles 2, Incredibles 2.
Cool.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a Patreon
Thank
or
you.
a patron. We love you guys, and it's so cool that we're still doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.